Greetings. Welcome to this edition of Kraken Knuckleheads. Just a quick intro, about 45 seconds or so. We'll get right into Louie Debrusk, the former NHLer and current commentator on television for the Edmonton Oilers and, of course, Hockey Night in Canada. I asked him a couple uncomfortable questions about his son's career. Jake, of course, who went from Boston to Vancouver. And so just really interesting stuff from Dad and also just a lot of laughs and a lot of fun stuff from an actual former broadcaster of mine at one point, two or three different times. And he is an excellent broadcaster. And this is a fantastic conversation, which we'll get to in a second. Don't forget to check out our material at SeattleHockeyInsider.com if you're a Kraken fan, and VancouverHockeyInsider.com if you're a Canucks fan, or either side if you're just a hockey fan in general. All the videos, past, present, and future, can be found at YouTube. Simmer Puck is the channel. Simmer Puck, two M's. Simmer, the nickname, Puck. And you can subscribe there. That would be greatly appreciated. We've got some unbelievable interviews coming up, and it begins this week with this one from a great guy and a wonderful broadcaster talking about the Canucks, Oilers, Kraken, Bruins, Louie Debrusk. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome in a wonderful broadcaster, former NHLer, and actually an old broadcast partner of mine on two or three occasions for Sportsnet in Canada, the great Louie Debrusk from Hockey Night in Canada and the Edmonton Oilers. Hey, Louie.
I'm doing well, bud. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, man. It's great to
Yeah,
see you. Great to
yeah.
catch up.
I
Man,
remember we went over to Gatineau, Quebec one time to do a junior game against Val d'Or, right? And I
yeah,
remember that great game too. It was an awesome game,
it
back
was
and
a
forth. But an Ottawa game too, we did and jumped around a bit there.
there was a Kingston, maybe that was the I can't remember
Kingston,
the
Ottawa. Yep, that was
Kingston
the one.
Ottawa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the OHL.
Yep.
Yep.
It was good hockey, good broadcasts actually too. And you've gone on to the
Yeah.
big time. They threw me into the dumpster, so I don't.
Hey,
uh,
ride the roller coaster ride. Ride the roller
that's right.
coaster
Well,
ride.
I've been doing that for decades. Hey, let's start. We can, boy, a lot of things to talk about. Let's start with your son.
Yeah.
Uh, Jake DeBrusk in Vancouver. He has 4 assists in 5 games, which is nice, almost a point a game guy. Is he jonesing to light the lamp?
He's Jones in the light the lamp. Of course he is. You know, he wants to get that first one as a Canuck. I know he's been he hasn't been gripping the stick. He just wants it to come, right? He's been playing a certain way, figuring out different line combinations, and I like the way he's played right now. I think he's really settled into a role. He's playing a physical game right now. He's jumping around a couple lines, but he's giving him that spark and such a sound 200-foot player. But there's no question he wants to light the lamp. I mean, he wanted to light the lamp the first game, and he was disappointed he didn't. But it'll come. I have no doubt that when the chances he's getting right now start to come, that's usually when he starts scoring goals.
So he's had a couple of 27 goal seasons. He's
Yep.
had a 50-point season. He's a former 15th overall pick of the Bruins. That was in 2015 McDavid's draft when they had 14, 15, 16 consecutive picks. Jake was the middle one. Is more expected of him? Does he expect more from himself? Are the expectations fair, or should we see more from him?
You know, I think probably early on the expectations might have been unrealistic to a certain degree with a young player coming in, but I think he filled into those expectations and understood what his role was in Boston, a very defensive minded team. His tenure in Boston, he was there for 7 straight seasons. He was the third highest goal scorer. So I look at that and say that's pretty good numbers on a team that was always in the playoffs, went to the Stanley Cup final in 19, went to the second round, I believe, 3 different times, won the President's Trophy twice when he was there. So that in itself, for me, I said to him, "You're playing the Boston way." I think that there will be an uptick offensively for him going to the Vancouver Canucks. They're starting to play a real stingy defensive game, though. And that's probably why they wanted him. They saw the system that he came from and how he plays the game, and he's fit in nicely. Listen, when they're buzzing, and I've watched every one of their games, they control the pace, very similar to how Boston did. They're fast. They got 4 lines that roll. They're physical, and they've got some really elite offensive talent, similar to Boston. So I think it was a real nice transition for him coming in. It's always a little bit of a feel out trying to find different guys and where they go on the ice and different tendencies they have. But no, he's settling nice. I actually really like his game right now. He should probably have a few goals. I know he got set up for a couple the other night right in front of the net. Typically, he's going to score one of those, but it'll come. And when they come, they usually come in bunches for him.
Yeah. Now, speaking of fair or unfair, and you've gone through this as a hockey person your entire life, like myself, or a broadcaster or observer, when a guy he was 5 years with Bruce Butch Cassidy, 2 years with Monty, and there was a little bit of a, maybe discontentment at some point. The mind of a fan or one of us always goes, and not just your son, is anybody else saying, oh, well, this player is selfish or this player has his own selfish
Mm-hmm.
mind, not a team guy. People tend to jump to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not obviously fair, right? So
Mm-hmm.
as you look at the entire Boston tenure, does he look at it as a positive? Or did he come out of it, feeling, was it time? Is it one of those deals where it was
It was
time?
time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was time. He loved Boston. He had a great time in Boston, loved his teammates there, loved the city, was very proud to put on that jersey for 7 years.
Yep.
Was there for 8 training camps, played a full season down in Providence wearing the same jersey more or less, but representing the organization. No, we've had these conversations, and it's hard sometimes when you leave, you look at the things, the reasons why you leave, but at the same time, you look back, he enjoyed a lot of real big moments in that organization and that team. Some wonderful memories, some amazing people that are going to be friends for life for him. All his first that happened as a member of the Boston Bruins. No, he definitely has nothing but admiration for being a Bruin, but for him, it was time. It was his first time ever since the time he was drafted to the Swift Current Broncos, 137th overall in the WHL draft, but they're drafted at 14 years old, 15 years old. It was the first time in his career that he had a decision to go somewhere where he wanted to go. He never had that decision up until this summer, and he took it. He took that decision, and obviously the Vancouver Canucks won. They wooed him. He liked the fit. He said, "This is what I'm going to do," and good on him. You know what? He just turned 28 on the 17th of October, and he's grown up in Boston. He'll always have great memories there, but he's looking forward to making some new memories with a team that he feels is moving in the right direction and moving that way quickly.
Yep. First year of a 7-year deal, he's making 5.5 mil a year, so he won't have to borrow money from his parents, which is nice.
Yeah, he still does. You kidding me? He still forgets his wallet somehow every time we go out for dinner.
Hey, Patrice Bergeron, by the way, not a bad role model to have.
No. Well, that's part of it too, right? Zdeno Chara, when he first got there, was wonderful with him. Just an amazing guy to just be around him every day and see what makes him tick and how he goes about his business. And you can't help but sponge up some of that because he's such a pro. Patrice Bergeron was right in the same mold, and looked at maybe as the best defensive forward ever in the history of the game. This guy just did it the right way every day, and he didn't cheat the game. And I believe that was the Boston way, and I think that that's sometimes for young players is very difficult to, change your game and play that way. But Jake did. He was a very good player for Boston, and they were a very good team. And he takes what he learned there into Vancouver and understands. I've talked to a lot of people around the league over the last few years, and any general manager and coach that I've talked to, they love the Boston Bruin players they get in their organization because they come into their team playing the right way. And we talk about it all the time, playing the right way, but there's no question if you look at the teams in the league, Boston has that identity. It's very difficult to get that identity, number one. It's very even more difficult to maintain it for years like they have, but it's the way they play the game. And every player you talk to going into Boston knows exactly what they're going to be up against playing against the Bruins. A physical, patient, mature team that doesn't cheat the game
Right.
and makes it hard on you. And that's how they play. Now, if you talk to any coach, they would love to play that way. That's the way they want to play.
Right.
So that's why they like Boston players, because when they come to their team, they know they have that already embedded in their brain and it's in their DNA now. There's some times where you kind of want to get out of that a little bit if you want to be a little more offensive. And I think that's something Jake's going to have to work with in Vancouver, and he is. But you can't always be the guy on the defensive side all the time. Sometimes you got to go play offense too. And I think that's one of the things that he's excited about with Van is the sense that a little more of an up pace offensively. So wants that defensive structure, no question about it. Be sound defensively, play hard. When you get your opportunities, go for it because that's
Yep.
what the game is all about, making good on your opportunities. So yeah, no question about it though. You play with the likes of Patrice Bergeron, Zdeno Chara, and you watch those guys on a day-to-day basis. And Jake was very young. He was the youngest kid in the team, I think, his first year, just turned 20. I mean, that stuff, just you absorb that, right?
Right.
And I remember there was a bag skate years ago. Well, I think it was his rookie year. He was injured and he was coming back, and Zdeno Chara was injured at the same time. And they were doing a skating drill. And obviously, Zdeno Chara is still running marathons. I mean, I think he runs 2 marathons a month since he's retired. So it's not like he's retired physically. He's just retired from the game.
Yeah.
But there was this real long, grueling skate, and Jake went for broke. He went for broke because he wanted to have a better time than Big Z. And he had a better time than Big Z the first time around. He thought they were done. And then he saw Big Z going again. And he's like, oh my God, I can't do it again. And he wasn't going to do it again. But then he got up and he went again because he saw that Big Z had done it again. But that's kind of what leaders do, right? They lead by example. And I don't think that Zdeno or Patrice were any different. I'm not going to say they were huge talkers because I don't necessarily think they were. I think Z maybe a little more than Patrice. But you watch Patrice get ready for a game and go out there and never cheat the puck. It's pretty hard not to do that when you're everybody else on the team.
Yeah. God, great examples. Yeah, I know some Chara stories. I was at his cup party in Trenčín, Slovakia, and after the next day, he took me around where he used to train in the woods.
Yeah,
He had his
yeah.
own circuit, and I heard some stories at that party about training with him. It's just unbelievable. Guys were just like, "Nope, going home," and he was just
Yeah.
starting for the third time. And yeah, it's amazing.
I I had heard another story about Big Z from Jake that I guess in training camp, this would have been 2 or 3 years into his career and maybe 4 years in. And Torrey Krug might have been second or third year, but Torrey came in. So Zidane had gone through his fitness testing. So they had chin ups. One of the things they did was chin ups. And
Yeah,
Z at 6'9",
yeah.
believe it or not, was unbelievable at chin ups. I know that's hard to do because when he extended from the bar, you're a big guy. How tall are you, Rob?
I'm like
Six seven.
close to 6'7". Yeah, yeah.
There
And
you go. So
he's 255, 250,
that's right. 250, 255. So Zdeno Chara went and did his chin ups. Now, something he wins every year is the chin up race. Does his chin ups. Torrey Krug goes in there and does something like 4 or 5 more than he did. He heard this. So he went back in the gym, redid the chin up test, and beat him. That's kind of, you can't teach that. I
No,
mean, that's in his DNA, the fact that he's still running marathons. But I
yeah,
really do truly believe, though, and I was so excited for Jake to be a part of that and witness that on a day-to-day basis. Just, how those guys prepare, what they do to keep themselves in top shape, but the mental toughness too. The mental toughness is just buckled down, and that's the Boston way, and that's where it really started. And it just trickles down into everybody on the team. And I think especially from Big Z early on, he's just such an imposing figure. Went on the dad's trip Jake's first year, and we were at the back of the bus talking about the fight we had. We fought each other when he was with the New York Islanders. The
yep.
most helpless I've ever felt in a fight in my life because I couldn't reach him. But the guys just thought it was so funny because my kid's sitting beside me and I'm talking to one of his teammates that I fought back in my career, which is just crazy. It's just one of
Right.
those, kind of messes with you mentally, but we got a pretty good chuckle out of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question. So there's your answer. All right. Well, perfect transition, Louie, as you do so well anyway. But talking about your son on television, we just briefly asked you ahead of time, 10, 15 times you've called the games.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can hide it, Louie, but you know which team you're pulling for. So is it
Yeah.
difficult or is it weird or both?
It's gotten easier over the course of time. I think the first few years, people even gave me a little flack for it. I kind of was really straight arrow down the middle, and I just called it like it was another game. And I've had a little more fun with it the last few years, and I am looking forward to having some more fun with it when I get to do the games in Vancouver. I've got one coming up on the 9th, which is the first time that I'll actually be calling a game live that he's in with the Vancouver Canucks, and I'll be between the benches that night, so it'll be up
Nice.
close and personal. It's a special moment every time I get to do it. Ray Ferrero's done it with his son Lennon, who's now doing some TV with the Vancouver Canucks, doing a great job on the panel. And I think that, I talked to him about it too. And it's impossible not to kind of get absorbed with what's going on in your kid's world on that game. I mean, we're all dads, we're all parents, and we
Yep.
all, want the best for our kid every single game. So I get focused on him sometimes, just from watching him on his shifts. But it's been remarkable, and I've had great bosses that have allowed me at Rogers to do the things that I've done, interview him on the bench a couple times, and just be down there and have discussions with him and have some fun with it. And it's gotten easier. I guess to answer your question, long-winded, it's gotten easier as the years have gone by. The first few years, I'm not gonna lie, I felt like I had a duty to be that broadcaster that when you're doing national games, you're in the middle, you're trying to call it down the middle, and you walk that fine line of each team. But lately in the last few years we've had some fun with it. It's been really cool to open up and be able to enjoy that with him.
All right, Louie. I occasionally get these weird, like warlock feelings. For example, I told Chara and Don Sweeney when we were in Prague preseason in 2010 that they're going to win the cup that year. It happened. I was asked who was going to win Rookie of the Year, McDavid's year, and I was like, you know what? I have this. There's an off chance McDavid gets hurt. I'll take this kid Artemi Panarin. Ding, ding, ding. And then this weird feeling,
Yep.
it only happens every few years. I get the feeling Canucks win the cup. Okay, so I mean, I can't guarantee it, but
Wow.
these bizarre little things that just kind of go every few years. I got it for the Canucks this year. So, what's your impression? What are the possibilities given what they've done? I'm a little concerned about mobility in the bottom portion of the D depth, but otherwise, I I see
Mhm.
I see good things.
I would agree with you. I've watched them more intently now with my son on the team in the last month, just in their exhibition series going into the early season, and now a few games in. I would say, it wasn't a fluke they won the Pacific last year. Let's face it, this is a team that went in there under Rick Tocchet and played a hard style of game,
Yep.
which I appreciate. I appreciate from watching so many Boston Bruin games over the years, and I think that that's kind of one of the templates they're trying to work off of. I don't think they're going to be exactly like Boston, but I think they want to be a strong, structured team defensively. They want to be hard to play against every night, but then they have the speed and skill to really make you pay. And they're getting production down their lineup. I don't know if their depth gets enough respect in Vancouver. I'll tell you
Right.
that. Listen, we all know JT Miller is a great player. He's a two-time 100-point centerman. Put up 99 points 2 years ago or whatever it was, 100 last year, career high. Pedersen's put up over 100 points. He had a little dip last year in the 80s, but still, you're putting up 80 plus points in a season in the NHL. You're a star in the league. Brock Besser had a career high. Quinn Hughes wins the Norris. I mean, a lot of things went well for them last year in a year in which they were really buckling down and being a hard team to play against defensively.
Yep.
So, and didn't have their starting goaltender for the entire year. So, I think there's a lot of things to like about their team. And I believe that's the biggest reason why Jake made the transition and said, I'm going to sign with the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, he looked at that team and he sees exactly what you're seeing, Rob, and what I saw. And he made that decision on his own. He went down, he looked at teams, and he's saying, where are these guys going to be in a couple of years? Where are they going to be in 5 years? And he liked what he saw. He liked the direction they were going, and he thought he could be a piece that could come in there and help them. And, I think that's exciting when you come to a team and you know they're good already and you think you can make them better. And I think he's going to. I really do feel like he's going to be a part of that and a big part of that. And he's going to help in that regard in filling a hole they need. And I think what they're going to do in the next couple of years, you're going to see them morph into a team that even gets better every year. They're going to make changes. And obviously, Patrick Alvin has shown he's not afraid to make changes. He's not afraid to go out there and make a trade to make his team better, which I think is a real key asset for general manager to have in today's game. You have to be willing to take some chances on people, and you have to be willing to make changes if it's not working. And so, for those reasons, I think it's as good a pick as any. Is what I'm going to say to you. I think it's as good a pick as any if you're going to pick the Vancouver Canucks to win the Stanley Cup. Um, Yes, there's some question marks about their goaltending with Thatcher Demko not starting the season. How serious is that injury? When he's in the nets, if he was healthy, if you could say right now he's going to be healthy for 82 games and the entire playoffs, I think they'd be a really hard team to beat because
Yep.
he's that good when he's on
Yep.
his game. He really is. He's an elite goaltender when he's playing on his game.
Yep.
Obviously injury prone, and that's a big concern,
Yep.
especially how, look at what's happening with goaltending in the league right now. It's just such a hot button topic, and it's one of those things where goaltenders are getting locked up for 8 years now because once you got one you know is good, you want to keep them. You're
Yep.
like, enough of this. We need this position. It is the most important position. I don't care what you say, right? You
Hey,
know what? And that right. And that
change the name of the game to goalie. It's been said a lot of times.
it's unbelievable. And you know what? Good on them for starting to dig their heels in and say we should be paid like the top players in the league because let's face it, they are.
I never understood why, like how they're not. They're
Yep.
easily the most
It's
important player.
baffling to me. I think it
Baffling.
has something to do with the starts, right, Rob? I think it has to do
Yeah.
with starts.
Yeah.
A good goalie nowadays, ideally, is going to be under that 60 starts,
Yeah.
right? That's ideal. I mean, yes, Hellebuck plays a ton of games. You've got Vasilevsky again. He's starting to get some wear and tear there. But I would say essentially, if you can keep your goalie 60 or less, or in that 50 some range, or right around 60, I think that's ideal. You're giving them substantial time off with a backup that's getting in there. for 20 to 22, maybe 25 games. And you can pick and choose and you can really map out the schedule in the course of the year. So you're giving them that time off and to get rejuvenated and repeat as many times as possible. But yeah, you know what? I think they've got all the pieces. I think that they are gonna change. I don't think that this team is going to be the same team come the trade deadline. I think you're going to
Right.
see some mixing and matching and maybe some different things happen. But it's a work in progress, and I've liked their last couple games. Though talk, it's pretty straight to the point when you listen to him in post game conversations. He likes a lot of stuff. There's still stuff to clean up. There's still some chances they're giving up that they'd like to take away, and that's any team right now at the start of the season. They're trying to figure everything out with some new personnel in the lineup.
All right. And with that in mind, two more questions. We're already long, but that's, we like talking hockey.
We're
Um,
talkers.
can the Oilers afford to go through this again like last year? I mean, it's not probably stretched out like last year's start was, but gosh, is this a team that's having the Stanley Cup final loser hangover, or how concerned are we about them getting things really going?
I really believe that's what it is, but this isn't new for this team. And
Yeah.
and here's the thing, it's not ideal. I'll be the first to admit it. I've covered this team for a long time now, and it's not ideal that you come out of the gates every year and sputter, with the exception of 3 years ago when they went to the conference final against the Avalanche. I believe they started 5-0 and 9-1.
Yeah.
Won the first five, lost a game, won the next four. So they started the season 9-1.
Right.
Okay. Went to the conference final. But in each of the 4 years around that year, they got off to losing starts. Losing starts. So am I concerned? I'm really not. I know that some people are, but I've seen this. I mean, it was the darker years, because my era was the dark years.
Right.
My era coming into Edmonton from 91 to 97 was the dark years for the first time in the organization. When I came on board, I started here, after 3 years in Phoenix doing the radio, it was the darker years. They were getting first overall picks every year, it seemed.
Yeah.
And they had to go through some really tough, hard, long seasons. And I think that still weighs on some fans here in Edmonton, if I'm being honest with you. I think that's still a little bit of post-traumatic kind of mentality from years that were really tough. Years where you were wondering how people were still coming to the rink, but they are great fans because they still kept coming to the rink and watching the games. But those are hard years when after November you're not making the playoffs. I mean, that sucks. And it was over and over and over again. Coaching change after coaching change after coaching change. So I'll tell you, the psyche is fan base a little bit fragile in that regard. But the last 5 years, I think, has hardened them a bit, to the sense that, hey, this team isn't perfect, but you know what? When it matters the most, they find a way to play their best hockey. That's important to me. That's the most important thing to me. And we've seen it. We've seen it when their backs were against the wall in the Stanley Cup playoffs. When their backs against the wall against the Vancouver Canucks down 3-2, bang, bang, they win 6-7, they win the series. Facing elimination 3-0 against the Florida Panthers, bang, 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 they win 3 games to push to 7, and a hard fought 1-goal game in game 7. It could have gone either way. Credit the Florida Panthers for closing it out. But you know what? That could have gone either way. This is a team that when their backs are against the wall, they seem to play their best. And I'll say this, it's kind of like when you go on vacation. Some people pack a week before and they have all their stuff in order. And then there's some people, like myself, that slam everything in their bag the night before, an hour before they go to bed.
Yeah,
When
baby.
there's a timeline, when there's a deadline, when your back's against the wall, you do your best work.
Right.
And I do believe that is this team. And sometimes they need that adversity. They need that adversity to kind of bring that out in them,
Motivation.
because and people are going to think this is crazy, but how many Art Rosses does Connor McDavid need? How many 50-goal seasons does Leon Draisaitl need? They don't care about that stuff anymore.
No.
Yes, they'll appreciate it when they're done the game. They will look back at it fondly, and they've done some wonderful things. But the only thing on their mind right now is that cup that has eluded them. That's it. So it's a long journey to get there. I have the faith that they're going to reel this in, and they've already showed it. I thought the last 2 games they played very good hockey. They should have beat Dallas there, and it's one of those games they did.
Right.
Tip your hat to Jake Ottinger. Sometimes the goalie is going to have a better night than you.
A
But if
goal.
they continue to play that, yeah, if they continue to play that way, I have no fear they're going to grind and they're going to get themselves into the dance again. One of the final 8, and they're going to give themselves an opportunity to go on a run.
And we'll see that Vancouver Edmonton matchup again. All right, we got about 7 minutes. One Seattle obligatory, since we're Kraken Knuckleheads, the obligatory Seattle Kraken question. They had Brandon Montour, Chandler Steve.
Yeah.
They get younger along the D. No more Justin Schultz, no more Brian Dumoulin. Riker Evans is a regular. What do you think?
Yep. Better. They got better. Now I know Chandler Stevenson's getting a little long in the tooth for the length of contract that he signed. I know a lot of people talked about that, but all he's ever done, win a Stanley Cup in 2018 with the Washington Capitals, and that year he was continually starting to push for more ice time. Goes to the Vegas Golden Knights, and with all the turnover they had there, he was one of the most reliable centermen the
Yep.
Vegas Golden Knights had in that whole tenure that he was in Vegas.
Yep.
I got a lot of time for him as a player. He is one of those. I watched him in junior, and I've watched him in the NHL, and he just goes out there and does his job. He's just really good at getting stuff done. So he's a big addition to that team, in my opinion. With a young centerman like Beniers, to watch how he does things on a daily basis, a two-time Cup champion, I think that's fantastic for him, and a guy that can take some of that pressure off him in a matchup situation. Dan Bylsma, another guy that's won a Stanley Cup as a coach too, had to pay his dues, getting himself an opportunity to get back there again. A new fresh set of eyes, a new outlook on life. I like what they've done in the back end. I mean, a Montour to me is a huge pickup. I think a lot of teams wanted him. He can skate. He plays a hard game. Played in that Florida system, winning a cup. He's right in the prime of his career right now, in my opinion. So they got two players, although they're a little bit older. I think they're prime right now and still have quite a few years left in the tank to really help that team propel themselves. So I think they've gotten better. I really do. I've always liked the Kraken. I've liked the way they played. Dave Haxtell for me got them playing a real hard, in-your-face brand of hockey where it was four lines. It was a depth situation. I don't think it's changed. I
No.
think it's the same. A lot of times when you're watching the Seattle Kraken, and this is a compliment, you can't tell the top line from the fourth line.
Right.
They go out there and they come at you in waves. And if you're not ready on your game, obviously the big question: can it get the goaltending? Can it stay that way? If it does, they're going to be a hard team to beat.
Yeah. It might end up being Joey
Yeah,
Decord more consistently, and they having Vince Dunn healthy all the time would
that
be helpful. Although
and
they,
that's fine.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
fine. They won without Dunner the other night, so we'll see. All right, you have a little bit of time, about 4 minutes. I think you alluded to a possible Bob Probert story before we got started, but we don't have, you didn't fight
Oh
Proby,
yeah.
but what
So no, you know what? Listen, I Probert was kind of an idol of mine. Coming up through the ranks, Proby was kind of what every tough guy wanted to be, right? Number one, he was the toughest guy in the league. So everybody wants to be the toughest guy in the league. Not everybody can, obviously. But he also scored 29 goals in one year. So he kind of was, Don Cherry used to always pump his tires, and I was a big Grapes fan, still am a Grapes fan. I just, he always stuck up for us tough guys. And he loved Proby, right? And Proby was the kind of guy that could go out there and beat you in many ways. He could beat you on the scoreboard and he can literally beat you up. So I admired him. So I always said to myself, I wasn't just going to go out there, tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, let's go. That was one thing I said. Plus, scared the bejesus out of most people. So it wasn't like you were going tapping, hoping to fight him anyway. But so I was in Chicago one night. Now, this is late in his career, and they had a lot of toughness. I think they had Rico Ciccone, Brad Brown. I ended up fighting Brad Brown this particular night. But I come into a scrum, and he kind of just gives me a straight arm, in the scrum and steps me back. So boom, I come back, and instantly I auto shed my glove. Like, I'm thinking, okay, like this is on. Like, here we go. Gloves come off, and he just stands there, and he just looks at me. And I was like, sorry, let me get these. I was like, did I drop these? Let me get these. Sorry, I picked them up, and then I think I ended up battling Brad Brown a little bit afterwards. But it was almost like, I knew it wasn't like, it was just, he just didn't feel like fighting, which,
right.
he was playing obviously a lot more than I was that night. But I was like, yeah, okay. Sorry, did those come off a little fast? All right. But yeah, it was kind of funny because just the way they looked at me is like, seriously? Like, what are you dropping your guns for? I'm like, okay, I'll get those. Sorry, I dropped those. But yeah, no, he was legendary. You know what? He was a guy that every time you played against, it didn't matter if you were a tough guy or not. You knew when he was on the ice, and he had that ability to kind of have that presence, even sitting on the bench. Sitting on the bench, you'd look over, you could see him. He just was so bigger than life in that regard. And you know what? He earned it. He earned it the hard way.
Yeah. And Stevie Y loved having him and Joey Kocur around, I'll tell you that much. But hey, you'll love this, Louie. I ended up doing some work for the Rangers in the league, and Madison Square Garden became my home rink as a media guy for 3, 4, 5 years. But back in the early 90s, my high school buddy who lived in lower west or the upper west side, I was going to say downtown, he got tickets, Detroit area kid. And my first ever game at Madison Square Gardens was uh, Domi Probert 2. And you talk about, oh my God. And Proby beat the
Yeah.
crap out of him. And it was 20 something seconds into the game. And you're just standing there and you're going,
Yeah.
this is unbelievable. And when it was over, we're just like, okay, now we got to watch a hockey game. It was just like,
The
it was
hype. The
unbelievable.
hype for those fights was incredible, wasn't it?
No, it
It
was
was
ridiculous.
it was like a heavyweight boxing tilt.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there wasn't the promotion you have in boxing, but it might as
No.
well have been promotion because
But
that's
they,
all we talked about building up to those big rematches.
but they
Yeah,
had a tail of the tape in the New York Post, and Bettman was all pissed off about
yeah,
it because it was his
yeah,
first year as commissioner. He's like, "Well, we can't have them
yeah,
fight." Bill McCreary tells a pretty funny story about it because
yeah,
he was the ref that night. Um, we got to get out of here. Louie, thank you very much.
yeah.
Great
My
to see
pleasure,
you.
bud. Good
Yeah,
seeing you again.
we'll see you
Yeah,
kicking around
and I'm
some.
sure we'll see you on the trail, right?
Yeah, won't be in
Absolutely.
Vancouver for
Okay, you
lots
take
of
care, bud.
reasons, but I'll see you in Seattle.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Louie. Always a pleasure. Mr. Debrusk played in 401 NHL games. He jokes that he spent about 400 more in the press box as a healthy scratch. 1,161 penalty minutes to go with his 41 points. That's right. Hey, his son Jake eclipsed the 100-point mark in terms of penalty minutes in the National Hockey League not too long ago. Two completely different players from two pretty much completely different eras, the way things are going now. Thanks, Louie. Hope you enjoyed it. Look for more this week and next. Some phenomenal guests coming up. At Simmerpuck on Twitter. Simmerpuck is the YouTube channel. VancouverHockeyInsider.com, SeattleHockeyInsider.com if you need to kind of look things up and see where things can be found. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Kraken Knuckleheads.